Let's start with some of the news that we've been hearing around the National Football League. Dallas, of course, loses Dan Quinn to Washington, which, as an Eagles fan, love to see that. Finally get him out of that position there. But now Dallas and the interview process here for the defensive coordinators, it's like they must have a big name, Casey. Rex Ryan is kind of the tipping point for me. Them talking to Ron Rivera was like, okay. I'm very surprised to see them bring Rex Ryan in for an interview.
I was surprised too. We've seen Rex Ryan do the Texas scene already, and look, I know Rex Ryan from like more of the collegiate football context, but when you're reaching for a big name, I think that the Cowboys need to stop doing that. It seems like they have no strategy to what they're trying to piece together. I mean, I was the person who was against them saying Bill Belichick was the answer. They're not thinking about the players, how to curtail their best skill set and put their best foot forward. It's just always the flashy name, and then the destruction comes at the end of the season.
Yeah, it's so bizarre. You would think if they want to go big name. Donnie, why didn't they just fire McCarthy and hire Bill Belichick then? That's what I'm not understanding with how they're letting this whole offseason play out.
Yeah, the one thing that you always get a kick out of with Jerry Jones, the bigger the better, right? So if you're going to move on from Dan Quinn, it's not really an exciting hire if you reach into, let's just say, an assistant coach here. Rex Ryan is going to bring the boom, not just on defense and blitzing, but actually behind the microphone, which Jerry actually equates that a little bit more. That's a hire that makes front page news. Now also, Rex Ryan was a great defensive coordinator throughout his career, but at the same time, it's been a minute, guys, since he's been back.
Very much so. And it will be interesting to see how Dallas progresses, because the last few years, although the defense did taper off to end out 2023, exposed in that playoff game against the Green Bay Packers, it has been one of the best in the National Football League, top 10 in each of the past two regular seasons for Mike McCarthy. No person, Casey, in the history of sport perhaps, has ever been on a warmer seat entering a season. Yes, he is back as the head coach in the Star, but they didn't give him that contract extension, not a vote of confidence necessarily from Jerry Jones. So it's a make or break year for Mike McCarthy, and that really deals with the coordinators that he hires as well.
Yeah, big time. I think that this is the last leg to see if he can do anything. I think it was more of a saving grace because we all thought McCarthy was out after the way the season dropped. But I love the fact that Donnie mentioned the loud voice that Rex Ryan will bring. A lot of people have mentioned if they're getting that old school fire up voice, and maybe that's what they need to get them going. So maybe that's where the motivation will come and kind of put some air in McCarthy's tires, probably kind of get his game plan a little more electrified and loud enough for those players. But I don't know. After the season, I think it's going to look a lot different.
It's very, very likely. Things are going to look a lot different in New England this year. We mentioned Bill Belichick out. Jerod Mayo steps in. They're continuing to bring in new names. It does look like Bill's son will stick around in New England. We're far away from, obviously, next year, but never too far. Casey, how do you feel outward right now about New England moving forward?
I like what they're doing. I like that one of his sons stayed back, because when you're kind of coming up and learning from your father, you need to prove that you can do it on your own accord. So that's going to be a big thing that we see from the Belichick family and his sons. But it was time, and I think Mayo is in the perfect position. You've got young players there that you can help kind of install. So we're looking at a big picture of what they can do 3 to 5 years from now. Yeah. I'll lean more towards 3. They did some pretty impressive things. It just didn't connect across the board.
Yeah.
Brian Belichick stays. Steve Belichick makes his way to the Big Ten Conference, the defensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies. He is going to be put into a mental pretzel DRS by what the Iowa Hawkeyes are going to bring against him next season.
Hey, look, I mean, that's college football, guy going from the pros to college. We'll see how it works out. But in the coaching carousel here in the NFL, were you impressed by any certain hire? For me, rock star hire Jim Harbaugh, I think, is an unbelievable fit, Casey, when he goes out on the West Coast. But was anybody else grabbing your attention, or were you impressed with this cycle?
No, my favorite's been the Harbaugh move so far. You've got Justin Herbert, who's come into the season and been one of the most looked out quarterbacks. Heading into this season, he was projected to have the most passing yards and all these stellar statistics. He hasn't had the team to function around him, and then health kind of impacted as well. Harbaugh has the style where he's got that quarterback background. He's going to be able to kind of get Herbert to that next level. He's going to package around Herbert so they can get to that next step. So I love this. And plus, shout out to the Chargers social media team, because they crushed it when the transition happened. I mean, who doesn't want to see Harbaugh's face everywhere with the most witty commentary behind all of it? But I think he's going to have the players backing him. And plus, I loved everything that he did at Michigan and how he's pulling those guys over with him. So you're going to bring a successful install to a team that just needs that boost.
The little legend back and forth press conference exchange he had was great. I'm going to end up on an island. The Dan Quinn hire is completely landed for me now that it comes with Cliff Kingsbury. That they have to get the quarterback, obviously, correct, Casey?
Right.
But sitting at 2 with what appears to be 3 high-level quarterback prospects, it would be pretty difficult for them to mess it up.
Yeah, I mean, weren't you impressed with Howell at some points of the season? I counted him out originally when I found out that he was coming in, but when you're dealing with coaching issues and miscommunications and stuff, you can't really put your best foot forward. He had some numbers in college that can translate to the NFL. He just needs the right coach to back him, in my personal opinion. And I don't give college quarterbacks a lot of credit when they put this kind of load on their shoulders early on in their career.
I wonder if at all them drafting Howell would make them not want to draft Drake May, like if they don't want to kind of run that back.
I don't think so.
You don't think that'll matter at all?
I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens 1, 2, and 3. That's the next big event in the National Football League is the NFL draft, because we know the Bears have that first overall selection, what their ultimate decision process is. Caleb Williams now a minus 1,200 favorite to be that number 1 overall pick. We talked about the Commanders with Cliff Kingsbury. I think they go quarterback of the future. And Jerod Mayo has said already, we're going to draft the most important player at number 3 overall. He didn't necessarily say it's going to be a quarterback or who that is specifically going to be at that position, but it will be a QB. But before we get to 2024, before we get to the draft, Casey, it is one final football game in 2023, Super Bowl 58, 2.5-point spread in favor of San Francisco, over under 47.5. When you look at the game numbers for Super Bowl Sunday, what stands out to you?
What stands out to me is what's going to go down in the trenches. I was talking to a couple of the guys on Media Row yesterday. Will Goldstein, who was a part of the defense that beat the Chiefs on the Bucs a couple years ago, and he mentioned something to me about the guy who wins the most one-on-one matchups is going to help lead his team defensively to a win. That's the 49ers. Coverage-wise, Chris Jones is going to have a lot of protection on his hands and a lot of weight to shoulder. And so I don't know. I don't want to count out the Niners. I know that the Chiefs are very methodical. They're like an improv team. How do you game plan for a team that can change their mind on a drop of a dime? But if the Niners defense can show up before the second half, I have a lot of faith in this team. And I think that the spread is going to probably match, but I'm kind of leaning Niners.
I mean, the interesting thing with Chris Jones as well, the Niners are very accustomed to going up against defensive lines that feature a superstar defensive tackle playing Aaron Donald twice a year. So obviously I think that is a bit of an edge. Props-wise, what has started to stand out to you?
Props-wise, I don't know if this is going to be favorable, but I'm Ben's face. I want to give a lot more love to George Kittle. I don't know what I was about to call him there for a second. His receptions are sitting at just 3.5. That's blowing my mind. We saw the trust fall, the ultimate trust fall between him and Brock Purdy last season when Brock Purdy got the crown to carry this team. When it comes to that instinct moment, Brock Purdy's going to look for George Kittle. And I had a colleague of mine, one of my favorite football minds, mention that while the Chiefs' defense is so brilliant, they're explosive laterally. Forcing them to play a vertical game, you're going to test their athleticism and you're going to put them on their heels a lot more. George Kittle's athletic enough to get vertical and make those plays happen. So I think there's going to be a lot more action. His matchups on that side of the field, I think we're going to see the guy that we love to see, the maniac, come out. So over 3.5 receptions, hammer it down, and then his yardage is at like 47. Yeah. Love to go over that. Yak-wise, I like Rice versus the Niners. Those yards after catch, I think he can hit the over 67.5. And then Brock Purdy, good plus money here for him to have over 31 attempts, passing attempts.
Quickly on that George Kittle point, I think you make a good one here because we take a look at both of these quarterbacks. Your best friend in a football game is that quick 5-yard play over the middle if the pressure is coming here. How do you think Brock Purdy handles the big stage? Because we know Patrick Mahomes has been there, done that before.
Absolutely. I mean, the way that he's managed pressure most of the season, he's sat top 5 amongst quarterbacks to do so, which was impressive. Now, of course, his completion percentage tends to go down, but something we saw when they were crawling back versus the Lions is this kid can use his legs. Also another prop, over 25.5 rushing yards for Brock Purdy. Yes. So I saw a level of confidence in him that I think he'll carry into this game. Yes, it's a big stage, but the support and the conversations amongst that team, he's looking at it the next game to win it for guys who got so close 4 years ago and missed the mark by this much. That's a different kind of tunnel vision to have. So I think that he's going to be able to weather. Of course, most people are rating him to have one big interception, but his big throw percentage is almost 1.5 points higher than Patrick Mahomes. So we know we're going to see a confident move. We know we're going to see him take risk, and Kyle Shanahan doesn't get enough credit for what he can do with these targets and Juszczyk and Kittle and all these guys. They have way more targets to match that level of the Chiefs.
You told us you were torn I think you like Brock Purdy.
And now I don't
Super
sound
Bowl
so torn.
MVP. I just
A lot of Niners love there.
It's spread. So can we say that? About
Not for me to
say. Well, you know what? Ask Johnny Boy if it's all right. We're talking Super Bowl dishes next year on Pro Football Today.